Thank you very much for the introduction. And I was actually asked to talk about environment in the next 25 or 30 years. And by choosing the environment, you know, you can do almost everything you can imagine because we are living in the environment. So whatever you would like to define it. I was actually thinking about first, you know, what is actually the future looking like? And then I found this very nice drawing here. We said, one guy says to the other, the future will be great. The other one says, the future will be awful. And then the future says, the future doesn't care what you think. And I think this is exactly what it is. We have to shape the future. We are the shaper of the future. The future is not something in itself moving forward. So then by thinking through what I should talk to you about is I was looking where people are thinking about future issues. And one report which comes out every year is the Global Risk Landscape from the World Economic Forum. And when you look at that slide, then you see, and I have put red boxes around it. Somehow it says me something here, but it doesn't move.
It was. There you go. It's on the ceiling there.
No.
There it goes.
Yeah, it blinks.
The future.
Okay. This is the future. The future. What does it say? It doesn't say anything. So let me just go. So what you have on this slide is actually, on the one hand, you have the impact. This is the y-axis. And the likelihood that something will actually occur is on the x-axis. It is given in a scale of from 1 to 7, both axes. But what you see here is actually apart from 1 to 6. Thank you very much. For that you need precedence. And what you see is this slide here. This graph comes out of discussion with specialists and people out of different fields. But what you see is interstate conflict is really on the high level here, but then comes the water crisis already. But then you look here, likelihood of climate change, adaptation, impact of it. You have then food, which actually is very high. They are all linked together. Then you have biodiversity loss, extreme weather conditions, natural catastrophes, man-made environmental catastrophes. If you take that all together, it has something to do with climate. And in effect, when we talk about the climate, we know that CO2 is probably the effect. We can discuss about it, but physically it's CO2. Whatever people otherwise think about it, have an impact on the climate. But the impact is not the CO2. The impact is the water. The water is the impact. Nothing else. Because we will have droughts, we will have floods, we will have not the water in the right place. And so the impact on us humans is the water. And when you look at these graphics, also those who are not really working in that field have the feeling, yes, the water and the water linked to all what we are doing are the questions of the future. So that's why I thought it would be probably a good idea to make a few reflections on water, not because of the graphics here, which I have shown, because I understand most about water, so that's clear. And when you look about what the water really is, the water comes down from the sky as a rain, and it splits up in two different types of waters, which is mostly not really clear for everybody. But it goes into blue water. This is the liquid water we see in rivers and streams and lakes and so on, and groundwater. But the larger part goes into what we call nowadays green water, and this is the humidity of the soil. So water, the liquid water, you can use for all kinds of things, for drinking, to put it into the bottle. Nobody would serve here a bottle of of wet soil because we cannot really extract that liquidity. So the larger part of the water goes into the soil and is there for plant growth exclusively. And the blue water is what we all talk about. But the green water is as important as the blue water. And here, just to give you an idea of how much water we really need, is we drinking, you have here per cubic meter per person and year. On the left you have the mixed diet, on the right you have a vegan person. It doesn't really change for everything instead of only in the green line there. So about 1 to 3 cubic meter per year for drinking. No big deal. It's almost nothing. Everybody can pay that price for 1 cubic meter of water per year, not per day, per year. Cooking, sanitation, around 20. Household activity about 100. Services about 150. If services are hospitals and restaurants, industrial activities. But then the large part, 75% of the water is actually embedded in the food. And you see then at the end of the day, what we need is approximately 1,500 cubic meter of water, primarily to feed us. If we have a mixed diet, if we are vegans, we are actually cutting on the water use entirely. This is just to show you what we are talking about. And the blue water is what you have there, is the liquid water. There is a difference between the first two lines and the three other lines, and I do not really have to explain this in South Africa, because South Africa was the first country in the world who figured out there is a difference between the absolutely needed water, which is drinking water, hygiene and cooking, and kind of the auxiliary needed water, which is whatever you do with this is luxurious use. And they have actually introduced, as first country in the world, a split price, so that you get the first two lines there at an affordable price, and the rest is economic good, and for the economic good you pay if you use more. And South Africa is really leading in this area. So what does that all mean? Now we need water to produce the food for the world, and because of, and what you have here on this graphic is then that you see this would be if people would eat 20% meat in their diet. This would be 6 billion people, so we are about here, around here. Here's 2000, 2050. This if we all would be vegan here, this would be this line here, and then this is what the amount of water we really need.
At least a month a year.
Right. So what you see is here also in this graphic, the green field is basically there is enough water to cover that food here. That means if we all become vegan, we can actually feed 12 billion people on this globe. It will become a little bit more complicated, but if we are eating a lot of meat, let's forget it. We cannot. It's just not possible. So we will be forced to become vegan. So I like a steak, I must admit. Now, being in the country of the big fives here, I thought I have to show you also that there are other big fives. And these are, the other big fives are not the ugly fives and not the little fives, so the big fives of the overproducer of food for the rest of the world. And this is the US, this is Australia, this is Argentina, this is France, and this is Canada. And this will stay like that in the next 50 years. Because the population is not growing there, the climate conditions, we come to that, will stay relatively constant in most of these countries here. So they will also in the future feed the world. That means whatever you cannot produce locally has to come from one of these 5 countries. And the interesting thing is that 4 of these 5 are out of the industrialized north, and only one, Argentina, wherever you're going to place it, Argentina is a funny country by itself. But Argentina is the only one who is in the south. So this is the picture, and all other things which people tell you that Africa is going to feed you in the future, forget it. It's too many people, not enough water. The food has to come from there. And also Asia, impossible, because Asia will be over too many people, and people will use up the food and the water. So we have to deal with this in the next 30 years. But now what happens when the climate changes? You know, everybody talks about climate change, and I have modeled here with a few students actually, what is the impact of the climate change on the staple crop, which is wheat, maize, and rice. So nothing else. And what you see is 2030, 2090. The interesting thing is, if you look at the color, is if you're brown, you have troubles. If you are blue, it gets better. Interesting is actually that if you really look to South Africa, it will certainly become better, certainly in the southeast of the country. There will be, and it will stay better also in the future, but 2009 is a bit far away. But I would say the near future, if we talk about the next 25 years, this is the part where actually you will have enough water for growing actually food, and even more food as you do now. And we come then why it's not happening at the moment. But this is an interesting thing. The real trouble area is India. India will get really bad. China will become better. Part of the US will lose some, but it will gain, and specifically Canada will gain at the end of the day. But the rest of Africa will also lose, and Argentina will win. So it's again Argentina who is going to be a major supplier of the food stock. This gives you an idea where the changes are taking place and how they are taking place. And if you look now what happens here in Africa, if you look at the frequencies of droughts, because droughts are very important. When you don't have enough water, you cannot grow your food. And here is kind of the drought periods between 75 and 95. And this is the future 20 to about 90 to 2040. Interesting is that you will get in the western part of your country more droughts in the future. However, there will be no droughts, at least not from the model side, of a long period in the southeast of South Africa. So the central part will be the tropical part anyhow, but the Sahel will get drier and drier and get on more droughts. So this is the effect of climate change on the water availability, and at the end of the day, your food production. Now, we were interested in South Africa because there is an interesting case, because you have the west and the east of the country. But you have also a relatively large part of the population who are smallholder farmers. And the smallholder farmers have really not a high yield. And what you see here, this is the normal yield a smallholder farmer will get in maize here. It's about 1 ton per hectare. If you irrigate, if you totally irrigate, you go about to 1.2, not really an increase. And we were really flabbergasted when we looked at the fertilization. If you increase the nitrogen fertilization, you increase it by a factor of 2.5. And if you actually then add the water to it, you go up to 4. So the combination of fertilization and water is important. And if you look at the numbers of the big farmers who can actually buy the water and can actually buy also the fertilizer, it will go up to 6. So then it comes into play between fertilization, different aspects of fertilization. But we all thought for a long time it is water for the smallholder. And we had this discussion, you remember, in Singapore? What is the limiting factor? It is nitrogen. Now the interesting thing for the economist is, what do you have to do to change that? The only thing I can tell you, don't subsidize nitrogen. Subsidies don't help. Subsidize the yield. And then the farmers have an interest to grow it, just as a small part indication. Because everybody is going to subsidize the nitrogen, and this will not bring you the effect you wanted. And here you have just a kind of a summary of the picture for southern part of Africa. You see South Africa is largely nitrogen limited with the smallholder farmers, and only part in the north is water limited. And the person actually who wrote the paper is not Bertil, so he has exactly the same name. He's also a Swede. But maybe it was in earlier times when you collaborated with Mr. Okay. So it was also Mr. Anderson here. But there is another thing. You are not alone in the world. And what we did here is looking at the food security and the instability, political instabilities in Africa. And you see when you are blue, then you're in good shape. So large parts of South Africa is actually blue. But if you get into the red area here, this is combination of population growth and increase of agriculture production. You will have hot areas here. So this is Western Africa, which we know already this is problematic here. But you will also get this Rwanda-Burundi area will not be stable in the future. And that's very close to South Africa. So this picture is only to show you that actually if you look at your own country and not taking the environment of the country into account, you may be on the wrong foot. And that part which actually will happen in the rest of Africa will have, specifically in the sub-Saharan Africa, it will have a tremendous influence of what will happen here. And by ending my talk, I thought, how gonna I show you? What I showed here to you was not a disciplinary story. It was a story where engineers, where physicists, where modelers, where economists worked actually together to find new solutions, also from social science and so. And how can we best reflect that? And I found this sentence from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and he said, if you want to build a ship, don't drum the men together to gather wood, divide the work and give orders. This is the classical universities, sorry, Mr. President, with all the disciplines. You know how to make wood, you know how to make steel, you know how to give orders or so. But if you really want to solve the complexity of the problems of the future, which cannot be solved by a discipline alone, you have to find out how you're going to do it. And he says, instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. And with that, you actually trigger the interest of everybody to contribute to the solution. Take all the disciplines you have, define an issue which is definable, and bring the disciplines together. And I think an Institute of Advanced Study, and specifically this Institute of Advanced Study, has a huge potential to exactly do that. I can tell you, nobody knows how to do it. Nobody knows. Everybody talks about it. Nobody knows how to do it. But it has to happen if we want to make a step ahead for the future. And this is the place where this could happen. Combined with how actually Singapore sees it. In Singapore is the great aim of education is not knowledge but action. It is knowledge and action. But Singapore is very clearly action-oriented. It has to do it because it has the problems which you will all have in the future and we all will have in other places of the world. They're living them already. So they have to go into the action. And I think the combination between South Africa and specifically the University of Johannesburg and NTU, which is relatively action-oriented, I must say, will be a huge advantage for actually find out how together we go that step, which nobody up to now really has done. Thank you very much.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.